Hello and welcome to lesson 17.1. In this lesson we're just going to review the different types of software that are available. We're going to look at the different categories of software, including the difference between systems and application software, the difference between general or generic and single-purpose software, the difference between software that's ready-made or specially made for you, and how to choose the right software between all these different categories that are available. One way of classifying software is as application software or system software. Application software is software that is designed to meet human requirements, to do a task that we want to be done. Whereas system software is software that enables the computer itself to operate. So having introduced those two categories of software, here's a task for you. The boxes show different types of software. Can you categorize them as either system or application software? Pause the video now and carry out this task on a piece of paper. I'll show you the answer in a few moments. So here are the various types of software categorized as either system or application software. The examples of system software all do tasks which help the computer itself to function, such as running a backup or defragmenting the disk, whereas the applications all do tasks with human wants or wishes in mind. For example, booking a hotel room or creating a spreadsheet to record our tax details. So take a look at those two categories. Within the system software category, there are two subcategories: operating systems and utilities. An operating system is a collection of many different software tools which together enable a computer to run completely. Operating systems sometimes lack particular items of application software, and in that case we can buy utilities. Utilities are small pieces of application software that typically fulfill a single role which is missing from our operating system. Utilities therefore do one task. They're system software, so they maintain the computer or protect or improve the computer. And can you think of any examples of software that you can buy to install on your computer that doesn't do any tasks for you but helps the computer to run better? One of the most common utilities that we install is a virus checker, because viruses require updated, powerful additional software to combat them, and that would be a utility. Here are some other examples: making a backup, clearing the memory, testing the performance of your computer, or finding files that are for some reason corrupted. On the other hand, application software do tasks for us, and we can categorize application software into two broad groups: general purpose, also called generic software, and special purpose software. General purpose software is usable for many different tasks, whereas special purpose software is used for just one task. So these aren't hard and fast categories, but it is a way of thinking about application software. Can you think of examples of software that fit into those two categories? I'll talk about that a bit more on the next slide, so pause the video if you want to have a think about it or a discussion now. General purpose software includes things like word processors and spreadsheets, which are basically empty and that you can use with any kinds of data or purposes in mind. Whereas single purpose software would be things like a payroll package or a facial recognition package or GPS, which we only use to do one thing and is a specialist in that one thing. And another way, a second way of classifying application software is into the two categories of off-the-shelf and bespoke. Those are sometimes called off the peg and made to measure. The reason I've shown a picture here of somebody being measured up for a suit is because we're using the metaphor of buying clothes to understand how we buy software. If you want to buy some clothes, you can go to a shop and buy ready-made clothes that are hanging literally on a peg or on a shelf. Or you can pay somebody to measure you up and make some clothes that are designed just for you. And it's the same when we buy software. We can go to a shop or go to an online store and buy some ready-made software such as Excel, the Excel spreadsheet. It hasn't been designed just for us, it's available for anybody to buy. Or we can hire a programmer to talk to us, find out what we need from our software, and then the programmer will go away and make that software just for us. So we've looked at 4 different categories of software. Obviously the categories overlap, but these are the 4 main types: generic, specific, off-the-shelf and bespoke software. Each of these types of software have some advantages and some disadvantages, and in order to choose the right software you have to know what those advantages and disadvantages are. So this task now is to copy this table into your book and fill in at least one advantage and one disadvantage for each type of software. To help you, you might like to think about an example. For example, if you were setting up a business, you'd have to keep tax records of all your income and expenses. The generic option would be to buy spreadsheet software such as Excel and adapt it by entering the right columns and rows to create a tax record. An alternative would be to buy specific software which is designed just to do one thing, in this case tax. And you could also choose to buy off-the-shelf software. Excel and tax software would fall into those categories, or pay a programmer to write a program to do your tax returns. So think about what would be good or difficult about each one of those choices. Pause this video and fill in the table, because in a couple of moments I'm going to show you the table all filled in. So here are some of advantages and disadvantages of each of the different types of software. Generic software such as Excel or other empty software packages, they're great in that they can be used for many different tasks. So they're great value for money because you can use it for your tax returns, for your invoicing, for all your business needs. The disadvantage, of course, is to make Excel do these different tasks. You've got to set it up. You've got to think of the column and row headings and start entering the data into a structure that you've developed. So it's more work for you. The alternative is to buy specific software already set up to do one particular task. And that's great if you just want to buy it and start using it straight away, particularly if you're not very much used to using software or working with computers. But the problem, of course, is that it's not flexible. It will only do one task, and you've got to work in the way that the software requires. It's got particular headings and forms, and you've got to work with the ready-made system instead of adapting it to your own needs. Both of these are examples of off-the-shelf software. Off-the-shelf software that you buy, it's just generic or specific software that is available for sale in Amazon, let's say. That software has been used by millions of other people before you. The cost is shared across the entire user group, and it's ready to use right away. So this makes off-the-shelf software a safe and good value option, and it is the most common way that people get software. Of course, because it's used by millions of people, it may not suit your particular needs exactly. On occasion, it might make sense to commission a programmer to make software just for you to suit your exact needs, and the advantage of that is that you get software that nobody else has that really does exactly what you want. But this takes time, and it's a lot more expensive than buying off the shelf or off the peg software, and it's much more risky because nobody's ever used that software before. So that's a choice that we'd probably only use if we had plenty of time and plenty of money. So those are the advantages and disadvantages of the different types of software that I've been talking about. You may have to make decisions about which type of software to use in your future, and you might have to answer a question about it in the exam. A lot of this is a question of common sense, like the context of how much money you've got available, how much time you've got, how great your skills are in computing in order to adapt software. So be ready to talk about some of these factors. Read the question carefully, or obviously if it's real life, think carefully about the circumstances. In the exam, you won't have to talk about particular products. They don't use brand names or manufacturing names like Microsoft in the exam. So don't worry about that. In fact, try to leave those out. In real life, of course, you'll have to do some research about what actual software is available. So be aware of what your software choices are, and then some of the factors that you might like to take into account, either in the exam or in real life. Do you want system software or application software? Do you want generic software or specific software? Do you want off-the-shelf or bespoke software? Do you want open source software or closed source software? I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next presentation. Do you want commercial software or free software? That's different from open and closed source. We'll talk about this next lesson. So, some of the factors that you might like to think about when you're trying to decide what software you're going to buy. What's the functionality of the software? That means what work does it do? Does the work that the software does meet the work that you need to be done? That's pretty basic. But there are some other issues, and I've listed them here. Flexible software can be used for many different purposes, and that could be quite useful. I personally would be very interested in the usability of the software. Is it easy to use? Can I just open it and start using it? Does the company give support, like for example a website explaining how to use it, videos to show you how to make use of it? You'd have to think about the practicalities. How urgent is it? How much money have you got to spend? And also, and this is one that sometimes gets neglected, we have to think about the long-term sustainability of the software. Is it reliable? Is it going to keep going for months and years without breaking down? And is the company constantly updating the software? Because then you'll get new releases and the software will keep up to date. You may not be able to discuss all of those in an exam question, but if you could write a sentence or two on each one of those factors, you'd have a nice little answer. But let's not forget as well that in real life, you need to think about things like this. Here's an example of an exam question, a couple of exam questions that you might like to tackle. A physics teacher wants to demonstrate radioactive decay using a simulation, perhaps like a graphic animation. And a hotel booking chain wants to distribute an app that lets people input a place and time and find a cheap hotel room. So looking back at the factors that I've mentioned, which of those are relevant in each one of those cases? Just have a little think about how you might tackle these and make some notes on a piece of paper of the sorts of things that you would write down in an exam question answer. You can pause the video and have a go at that now. Okay, so you just made notes for the last slide, and this is the final slide of the lesson. And here's a much longer exam question. People might find it easier to review medical issues talking to software rather than to a person. Opinions differ about that. Discuss the factors that might affect the successful introduction of this type of software to collect medical data. So there's a lot of issues there, not just about the type of software, but about how people interact with computer systems. In the exam, that would be between 9 to 12 marks, and you'd be expected to be writing for about 10 minutes. So I'm going to stop the lesson now. If you're my student, we're going to look at this question, we're going to write answers, and I'm going to review them. But in any case, have a go at this if you're preparing for an A-level, because being able to write good answers to questions like this, drawing on common sense and knowledge of computer systems, will help you to get a good grade. Okay, so in the next lesson, we'll look a bit more closely at the different types of software that are available. So bye for now.